Gonna mix up Durabond. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a little bit of water into your pan. Now we don't have a big mock-up, so the less water the better. You put this much water in there, you're mixing up a half a pan of Durabond. That's not very much water, right? I like to put a little water in there first. You don't have a lot to do with the Durabond. Then I set it on a bucket. Next thing we talked about with this quickset, right? This is Durabond brand. I like to mix it up a little bit to make sure that the active ingredient is active throughout the entire thing. There's nothing worse than when it says 45 minutes, it's supposed to set in 45 minutes. There's nothing worse than watching it set 2 hours later. And if it's a 20-minute bag, it sets in 20 minutes, but the active ingredient has to be mixed up inside of it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna dump a little bit into the pan. And if you wanna come in close, you can see, that's all right with me, with the camera. So I put about that much in there. I covered up the water, but you can still kind of see the edges. A little bit goes a long way, and I can always add a little more powder. I can always add a little more water if I need to, but I'd prefer to add a little more powder. So I'm gonna need a little more powder in this one. It's gonna be a little bit too wet. I would like to mix it up to a consistency where it doesn't fall off of my knife. Depending on the size of the holes or the gaps that I need to pre-fill is how thick I want it to be. So that's about right there. So what I'm gonna do, mix it around like this. Get that powder mixed in there. There it is. So I'm gonna use your pan, so you'll be able to use the Durabond when I'm through. There we go. Looks a lot like mud, right? Has the consistency of mud, but when I hold it up, it's not really falling off of my knife. It is a little bit. I might, depends on if I'm filling a bigger gap in, then I might reach my hand in here and put a little bit more in there just to tighten it up a little bit, because if it's loose, it's not good to fill bit larger gaps with loose Durabond. So I'll throw a little more in there, finish mixing it up, and now let's go over and look at what we're gonna fill with it. So you're going to walk over to your area where you're going to be working, and you're going to want to look for imperfections. They may not always be as easy to spot as this one is right here, but this is pretty common around light boxes. From any time they pick the drywall up with forklifts, it causes damage. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut that damage out, and then you're going to want to fill that with your Durabond. Okay? You're going to want to walk around and look for any large gaps. See, on this one here, we got a little spot right here. It's actually kind of hard to see, but you got one there and you got one there. You also have a very large gap down here. That large gap is not good. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the Durabond, press it into that gap, and then wipe it tight. Now, wiping it tight is all about the angle of your knife. If I take mud and I go to put it on here, if I have the angle of my knife like this, then it's going to leave a lot of mud. No matter how hard I push, it's going to leave the mud. But if I take the angle of the knife like this, it's going to remove every bit of mud that I place on the wall. So that's what I mean by the angle of your knife. You don't want to leave mud on there. So whoever's mock-up this is going to want to finish filling this gap, cut this little break here, cut that break there, and they're going to want to fill that with Durabond. So that's how you mix Durabond, and these are the cracks and the things that we're looking to pre-fill. We do this before we tape. Thank you. Did you shut that off?